So let's say I want to have data frame. So data frame, you can always create it with dictionary, you can create it with list. So let's say just df, and that's coming from Pandas data frame. And then we can send a dictionary. It should be similar to this, but if I send it like this, it will put the player as the column, which would change the meaning a little bit. So if I send it like this, so the players would be the labels on the columns. Okay. I'm just gonna print like a line, a separator, so that we'll know where to look. And then try to print that data frame. Okay. Oh, sorry. So it is supposed to be two-dimensional, right? So it has to have, like, the value has to be a list or any collection. Okay. So that will create. Okay, so I'll create one row because the list has one, okay? And every list is a column. So we're basically creating one row. All right, so if we want to have columns like this, I'm just gonna put them all once so that, okay. Okay. So now it would look more like a proper data frame. Yes. Oh, so yeah, that's good. That's good to try. So let's say if we have inconsistent rows, would we be able to have inconsistent rows if we have in the array? We can't, right? So we can't do this here either. It gives you an exception here. Okay, they have to be consistent. Okay, now how can we access? Okay, so this, now we have to be careful now if we're mixing up creating series and mixing data frames. It may be when you're writing the code, these look like as if they were consistent, but in reality, we kind of transposed it, like we kind of rotated it. Okay, so when you send the dictionary to the data frame, the column is like the key is the label for the column. Okay, so if you want this dictionary, this data frame to be consistent with the series, you have to be careful with how you put the labels. All right, and we can still have the indices. We can have set the labels for the rows using the index parameter. Okay. So now let's try this. Length of value 3 does not match. Didn't I fix it? I just fixed the minimum. 1, 2, 3. Oh, here we have just 3 values. Okay. Now, if I access game 1, it will give you the series with the labels with it. Okay. If I try to access game 1, what we get is a series, and then we can receive it in a variable, or we can just use another brackets and continue working with it as a series, just like we did with the other one. Okay, so this is the series that we have. All right, another very popular feature that it used with data frame is when you have a data that is coming in a file, you're not generating the data in the code, you're reading the data from outside source, like a file. Now, there are two very popular data formats. Just a few years ago, there was XML was the most popular data format. Okay, right now the most popular data format has much lighter way to represent the data, which are the comma separated values, the CSV files, and the JSON files. Okay, so CSV is pretty much a plain text file, just a notebook, notepad, or any plain text file, but just has values separated by commas. So obviously, the first row would be the labels of the columns when you read it in an interpreted frame. Now, when you have a JSON file, so JSON is short for JavaScript Object Notation. It looks very much like the dictionary that we have in Python, right? Looks like it, but it's not exactly the same. Like in a dictionary, you can have anything as a key, right? Now, in the JSON file, the key must be a string. And you have to surround it with double quotes, not single quotes, not anything else. Okay? Double quotes, that would represent the label of the column. And then when you read it, you just use the corresponding function. So here we have read CSV, and then you give it the path to the CSV file, and it turns it into a data frame. Or you can read it with a JSON that reads a JSON format. Okay, so that the function will read the format as it is and turn it into the data frame so that you can work with it programmatically. All right, so here I have the CSV file. It's just plain text file with just values separated by commas. And the JSON file surrounded by curly brackets, but have key value pairs. Now let's see. I was to read. So let's say data frame from comma separated values equal. So pandas dot read. Now we see how many formats that we can read from. Almost every formats you can think of is there. Okay, the ones that are most popular are CSV and JSON. So we just give it the name of the file. So here we suppose that. Okay. And then when you print it, you will see that. Okay, so when you read it from the file, you just read it with the labels of the columns. What if you want to add labels to the rows? You can do that. So this is how we read it. Now let's say programmatically you decided to change the labels of the columns. So you can do that not necessarily in the constructor. You can just say df dot index, and you just give it the list of labels there. Okay, now when you try to print it, it would now have some labels for the rows as well. I need the same number of lines. How many rows do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Same thing with the JSON file. Now we see if the JSON file, I forgot to put really surrounded with small double quotes and use single quotes instead. It's not recognized as a JSON file. Okay. So it has to follow that format or the convention of the JSON file, and you can just read it the exact same way, but instead of JSON. So instead of using that read from CSV, you just read JSON, and then the name or the path of the file. From here, all right, so let me just print it so that we see it. And we can always change the labels. You can transpose if you want. You can make the rows into columns and the columns into rows. Okay, you can do all different types of processing on it. All right, so that's the central data structure in Pandas. There's a lot of things that happen, like you can do with Pandas, but I just wanted you to know what it is, where to find more information, and just understand the basic data structure. Okay. Any